Alright, welcome to character drawing. So this is a fun one. This is where we're actually like applying the stuff and creating some cool things. So I have in my reference folder, these are some sketches of different characters. And that's actually the one I ended up doing. Now there's not a whole lot of prep work to this. All I did was, these are all pictures I took with my phone, and he was this one. So I brought him into Photoshop. So you don't need to use Photoshop for this, especially if he's just on the one sheet. But I did because I wanted just to kind of enhance it. You can use image adjustment levels. And what you can do is just to kind of help boost some of the coloring of it, you can drag this line here to like where the black is. Obviously you can go too far and it looks horrible. And then this is the white line to boost some of the white. And then you can play with kind of like the mid tones, okay? And what this does is just kind of helps you get a better view of your image. I always like to do that before I start working on stuff. And then you can also crop. Some of these tools you might be familiar with if you have a phone. The crop tool is right there. I'm just going to drag a box around Superman. Okay, this is the one I decided to do of all of them. I just liked it, so went with that. And then you hit enter. And then I just saved this as a JPEG that I could then bring into Illustrator. Okay. So you don't have to draw your own stuff, okay? So I drew my own and then went off of that. But realistically, you could go online and grab one of these. Just make sure that whichever one you would grab, that you've kind of given, or not kind of, but you have given credit to the author or the artist. You want to find something that has enough detail to it. Like something like this is probably too much detail, especially for like beginners. Something like this is probably a good amount of detail that you could go into. This right here is not enough detail, right? So find a good happy medium. And even something like this, you could always enhance it afterwards, okay? Like you could add more lines or whatever, okay? So make sure you're picking an appropriate character to do. I searched for chibi, which is just like they're little adorable characters. Like, here's Deadpool. It doesn't get much more adorable than seeing a chibi Deadpool. So you can do chibi DC. There's a whole bunch of them. Again, try to find something that is visible so that you can actually see the character. Make sure it's big enough so that you can do it. Kind of going beyond with this too, if you drew your own character, that would be like a going beyond part of that, right? So if you want those extra points or those points for going beyond, that's ways you could do that. Using your own character that you developed, but again, that same style. So if you drew a horrible character, probably not a good idea to use them, but if you drew something that's appropriate, then definitely you'd want to. Also look at some of these. I'm just going to zoom up on this one. These ones are nice when they're already kind of finished, because that way you can see where things like highlights are, where shadows are. You can see where some of the line work is. So that really helps get that in there. My original character that I had, I didn't have any of that stuff. Oops. One-legged Superman. I just had a line drawing. So then I have to kind of figure out all that other stuff once I actually get into Illustrator. Okay? Cool. So pick something that is definitely appropriate. If you have a question about it, definitely ask. Before you even start the assignment, ask to make sure that it would be inappropriate. Something at this level is actually probably a good level of realism to go. Especially because you could downplay some of this if you didn't have the time to finish it all. If you don't have time for all those highlights, or you want to put your own in, that's no big deal. You just want to make sure that you have the information there, okay? This one is too simple, not enough information in there, right? Okay. Like I said, any questions, make sure you let me know so there's no confusion. All right, so to start this, you go to a new doc. 6x6, so nothing's changed there. A lot of these obviously have been 6x6. We'll start getting into some other formats once we get a little bit further on. Okay, so oops, I just make a new document. There we go. And in this one, I'm going to place. Remember last time we talked about copying and pasting the image, or you could place it. When we do a place, the image is actually embedded or is linked to it. When we do a place or a copy paste, then it's actually embedded into the file. But we can embed this file in here as well. We don't have to keep it as a linked file too. So just stuff to remember. All right, so he comes in huge, so I'm going to shrink him down. So I grab the anchor, hold Shift, hold Alt, and shrink it down. Just like our pepper that we did, our gradient, we want to get this as big as we can get it so that we have plenty of room to work with, keeping in mind that we could make it bigger or smaller even later, okay? Now with this, I want to lock him, okay? So I don't really need like on the pepper, we had a tracing or a extra version out here. We don't need that with this guy. So I'm going to take this layer and I'm just going to call this reference. There we go. And I'm going to take the reference and just make sure he's centered vertically and horizontally. So as I drag him right, there he is. And I drag him up and down, there it is. So he should be centered. So now I'm going to lock him, okay? Now just because this image is centered doesn't mean that he is centered, okay? So this is one of the nice things about doing this in Illustrator after the fact, is I know that my proportions are not right. I'm going to hit Control R to bring the rulers up. And I'm going to drag one of the rulers over. Now you'll see it's not going to let me drag anything over because it says it's pencil with a lock. Your guides go on an actual layer. So I need to make a new layer. I'll call this guides. And I'm just going to drag across a guide. Okay. So I'm going to drag it to about the center of his head. And there it is. And you can see that this cuts down. Let me scoot over a little bit further. Yeah, pixel snap is always on. Why are you always on pixel snap? There we go. About there. It's snapping to the center. It's not snapping to the pixels. So I'm just going to nudge that over. Okay. So that's centered on him on the head. But if you look down here at the feet, it definitely isn't. So this is a nice thing about doing this in Illustrator is that we can adjust that. I could also go to my reference and rotate it, but it's not a huge deal. This is reference. It's not final artwork. The final artwork is final artwork, okay? Also, if you look at where the ears are, just to drag a guide down so you can see it, the ears are slightly off of one another as well. You can see this one's a bit lower, and if I drew another one down here, you can see this one's, you know, hanging a little bit lower than that, all right? So, not that I'm just pointing out my own horrible proportions or anything or lining up, but I want you just to see that. So I'm also going to drag one to about here for the eyes, just so I know where about the center of the eyes are. And then everything else that I do, I'm going to basically draw half of this and then flip it over to the other side, okay? So even when I draw the head, I'll actually draw the whole head. I'll decide which side of the head I like better, and then I will delete the other half and then mirror it over, okay? So with this, I'm going to use the pen tool. And it doesn't matter where you start. I like to start on a center line at least. But it doesn't matter if I start at the top of it or the bottom of it or this right side or the left side. I just like to make sure I have a point right here at the center. Okay. So I'm going to go out here and draw the shape of him. Now as I'm drawing, I'm not seeing any line. I don't have any fills over here. So I need to pick a color so that it starts filling it in. Come on. There we go. Get rid of the fill. Alright, so I get here. I'm not going to follow the ears. I'm actually going to draw the ears separately. Okay? So I'm going to imagine that the head is right here. Okay, so there's where like the top of the head is. Doesn't matter if there's a lump there. I can obviously straighten that out later. Come down here. Come down here. There. Okay. So, oops. And I drew that on the guides layer. I shouldn't have drawn that on guides layer. So I'm just going to click that. That. Come on. There we go. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to drag this to my new layer, and I'm going to lock my guides. Okay. That way I can't screw up my guides. And now this is on a separate layer. All right. So now I can turn my reference off. And then just looking at the head shapes, you know, which side do I like better? I like this side because it has more of a chin here. This side just has a weird bump. That's not a big deal. I could cover it up, fix it up, whatever. just grab the handles here and just tweak that some. There we go. Okay, so I like this side better than that side, especially the thickness of it. This side is a nice thick side. This seems really thin. So I'm just going to grab this and delete. There we go. And I'm going to mirror it. Okay, so I'm going to go to my reflect tool, which is O. Okay, so I hit O for the reflect tool. Here's where my pivot is, right there. Okay, so I'm going to move to the guide and just click. Okay, so that puts my pivot right there at the center. Now, if I just click and drag, it will reflect it over where I'm dragging. If I hold shift, it will snap it. Okay, now what it's going to do is just move it over. It doesn't actually copy it. That's where you have to use Alt and then drag it over. Okay, oops. So let me click this again and then hold Alt and then drag. Okay, now I'm going to hold shift so it snaps and then let go. Cool. So now I have two halves of this. And then I just need to join these together. Okay, because right now this is one piece still, and then this is another piece. So I'm going to marquee these points here with the direct select. And I'm going to hit Control J. And that will join those together. I'm going to go down here, Control J. Alright, so now they're joined together. Now at this point, you can see that the handlebars are kind of like at an angle. So I'm getting this like, let me turn the guide off so you can see it. And this weird peak. Okay, again, this isn't a huge area because this is going to be where his hair is, so that'll actually be covered, but I still like to make sure it's nice, okay, especially if I decide to animate it or something. So I'm just going to scoot this up a bit, go in with my pen tool, and then just convert this and smooth it out. So I just held Alt, and then I can drag that out. I don't like that. There we go, it's better. Okay, so there is his head, and it's perfectly symmetrical both ways. Cool. All right. Now, here's another thing that's kind of neat about this is as I'm looking at this, here's his head. His eye line should actually be, come on. Oh, it's locked. His eye line should actually be like maybe here, which is the center of those two things. Okay. So that's a good thing about using this in Illustrator too, is that not only can I symmetry things, but I can also move things around. If I don't like where the eyes are at, I can move them or do whatever. Okay. So let's go through some of the other pieces before we get to the eyes. All right, so I'm going to go to the hair and do the same thing. So I'm going to lock the guides, make sure I'm on layer 3, which is my drawing layer. I should probably name that. And as I start drawing things, I'm going to get a lot of different items, so I might need to name them. So that's going to be head. All right, so now I'll draw the hair. So this is going to be down here, like that. In. And his hair doesn't necessarily have to be symmetrical. I may want parts of it to be symmetrical, but maybe not the whole thing. Oops. And you see, I kind of went. Here's where his head stops. So I need to scoot this over. Background off, make sure I have a color on this. Alright, so here's what it looks like just with a white fill and a black line. You can definitely see there's some offness here because this one, because of where the head was off, the hair right here, the sideburn was really low, really close. So I need to adjust all that stuff. This one, maybe it's a little bit too small even, so I'm just going to pull that one over some. Go with my pen tool, maybe just kind of smooth that out. Don't be afraid to smooth out points even after the fact if you want to adjust something. Where you want it to be nice and smooth, make sure it's nice and smooth. Where you don't want nice and smooth, then get rid of the nice and smoothness. Yeah, I like those pointy. Okay. Alright, so there's his hair. Now I'm going to do the same little trick. I'm going to take this side and delete it. Now I don't have a point right here at the center, so I need to make sure I have that. Boom, right there. So now when I marquee all the points, I can delete it. You'll see it deleted the back half of his head too. So I may want to lock the head, then delete that, There we go. Then I can use my reflect, so I can hit O again, make sure I'm clicked onto the center, hold down Alt, drag, hold down Shift. There we go. And then marquee these center points with the direct select, Control J, marquee these, Control J as well. Okay. Now with this, you'll see that I get some like funky shape here. Okay. And it's because those points, even though I have snaps on, it didn't really snap to it. Okay. So now that they're joined, they're actually like in a weird position. So I'm just going to use my pen tool and just subtract one of the points, and then just move this point over a hair. There we go. Close enough. There we go. So now his hair is symmetrical, and then if I needed to or wanted to, I could grab a piece of this and then just kind of duck it down some. So now it's not. Okay. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. I like to keep it symmetrical pretty much until the end, and then I can start to tweak things. Okay. Yeah, so that's looking like a pretty nice shape so far. All right, so let's draw his squiggle. So I'm going to take this and get rid of the fill so I can see the squiggle. I'm going to lock his hair. There we go. So label it hair. Going with my pen tool. And this will give you a flashback to that first assignment where we're doing the pathing, because this is very similar to, stuff like that. Alt click that one. Drag this out. Drag that out. And then alt click there. I don't need to connect this because I just want the line for now. So I just click off. Boop. And this is hair squiggle. Alright, so you turn that off. Just to see what everything looks like, we'll just give this the default. Oops, unlock these two. Just give these a default coloring. So now we can see there's his hair, there's his squiggle, there's his face. Okay, and again, don't think that anything is locked in. You have the abilities at any point to go through and tweak things. You don't like where the hair is, you can scoot it over. Okay, especially the way that we're drawing this is that we can move things around. So even if I don't like the place of the ears or the eyes or the whatever, I can move those things around. All right. All right, so let's go back to this. No fill. Okay, the reason I'm taking the fill off again is so that I can see obviously my drawing. If I didn't, everything would be white. All right, let's go in with the ears. You may want to hide stuff, if things are getting in the way. Just turn them off. There we go. So that's that ear part, and then I'm going to just draw this little ear canal. I'm actually going to draw it a little bit lower than the original drawing. Sometimes when you do that levels in Photoshop, you actually lose part of your drawing. It just kind of erases stuff. All right, so let's see what we have here. This is ear canal, and I'm going to put this as his right. Ear right. Okay, so I have ear right, ear canal right. Okay, and then again, hide this. Grab all of our stuff, fill it. And now you can see how we didn't have to draw the ear because of where it's at. Now this also depends on too where this ear is in the shuffle. If it's lower down, you can see now the hair is in front of the ear. So I may not want that. I definitely don't want it here below the head because now it's like behind it. I liked where it was right at the top. Okay, so remember your layer stacking and how we have that stuff set up. I also want this to maybe extend a little bit further like that, and maybe have this push in a little bit more like that. Just want to have a more of a division here between the hair and the ear. There we go. Okay. All right, so that's cool. I like this point right here. She needs to smooth out just a touch. Oops. It might even be this one just comes out too much. Yeah, there we go. Okay. There's a little squiggle here. Let's see what that is. Yep, this handlebar is going a little bit too far. Bring it back in. There we go. Okay, I'm ignoring this. There's a little line there. I'm ignoring that. Don't need to worry about it now. Okay, set this back to no fill. Turn this back on. Let's go with the nose. There we go. Let's go with the mouth. You can try this other tool also. This is the curvature tool. And then what it does, just so you can see, is as you click points, it kind of predicts it. Okay, where your next point's going to be, it's going to try to keep a nice smooth transition. Okay, so you can't really tweak it the same way you would the regular pen tool, but something like a mouth or a nose, you definitely could use this tool. It creates the same kind of curve after, so if you wanted to tweak it, you can tweak it. Oops, I need 3 points for this to be actually curvatured. There we go, perfect. All right. There we go. So there's the mouth, there's the nose. We know what the other stuff looks like. All right. So now let's get to the eyes real quick. So on this one here, I turn on my Superman. This is what the eyes turned out looking like after I was done. And I just wasn't too happy with it. I'm going to swap this eye in and pull that eye out. There it is. So just ignore these little things here. There you go. So I just wasn't happy with the way that eye turned out. So I just redrew it, okay? And this is, again, one of the cool things about this is that you're free to explore and experiment with different techniques, different ways to draw something, okay? So I'll get to the eyes in a little bit. So for now, I'm just going to leave it. And then the next step I would do is just go through and just start outlining things. So knowing that, in this case, the neck area, which is right here, okay, now knowing that our object is not symmetrical, I need to be careful because as I start drawing this, I could very easily make, just so you can see it a little more obvious maybe, I could easily make the neck really fat on one side and thin on the other. So I really have to use that symmetry across the board, okay? So put a little marker, put a little marker. I can even probably eliminate this point and then just smooth that one out. There we go. And something happened here. I think I might have gone too far with that. Yes, I did. I actually clicked like past it somehow. There we go. All right, so there's his neck. I hit the O key to get to the reflect. I click it on the center line. I hold Alt, I drag, I hold Shift. There we go. I marquee these points and hit Control J. Now here I can't really marquee. Well, I guess I can because I don't have that filled in. Never mind. If I had this face filled in, it wouldn't let me marquee. So just be careful with that. Okay, so now that's all one piece. Cool. Turn this back on. All right, so now his neck looks really long here, so I would definitely want to adjust that so that it's not as long at some point. It doesn't need to be right now, just at some point, okay? Then I go through and do the same thing. I'm outlining different pieces here. Let me jump back to my drawing here so you can see it. Because you don't need to see each one of these, but here is the top of the capes that I drew, okay? And you can see that I drew even this up against that so that I have these top of capes that just sit right on top of it. I have the Superman. Do I have that locked? There it is. Here's Superman's body right there. Okay, so you can see that that's just one piece. And again, I symmetried it. I drew one side out, I adjusted it and tweaked it, and then symmetried it. Here's his belt, here's his underwear, here's his leg, here's his boot. Okay, so I like to overlap as much as I can just because it makes it kind of easy to find that shape, to have it flow better. Okay, here's his hand. Okay, I'll get into the hand a little bit. There's his cape. All of the stuff drawn out, very simple, and then layered to line up correctly. Okay. So once you have to that point, I'm just going to copy this. Let me delete some other stuff here I don't want to do yet. You see all these little pieces that are like done, oops, after the fact. Cool. All right, there we go. So now we can see what it looks like when it's just the outlines of it. All right, so now let's go into how I did the eyes. Okay, so these eyes here, if we look at just the basic shape of it, we have just this, if you look at just the outline here, okay, that's just the basic shape. And everything else is kind of built inside that. All right, so let's go off to the side here just so you can see this a little bit better. So I'm going to take a basic shape, maybe, like an ellipse, and make that basic shape. Okay, so there's the shape I started with. Then I went in with this and just kind of shaped what the eyes shape would look like. So if I wanted him to maybe look more sympathetic, I can go like this. More angry, I can go like that. Okay, Superman's a gentle soul, not according to the movie, but there we go. So something like that works. Maybe have this part come in a little bit too. All right, so that's good. Now to give the eye radius here a bit of a different shape, I played with these, and I just found one that, you know, kind of worked. Like that one seems good. I played with the weight. Okay, and that gave me like a good thickness up here, some thinness there, and thinness there. If I want to adjust further, remember I have the stroke weight tool, or the width tool. So I can hit Shift W, and then I can play with the weight. So I go to these dots, and if you look at them, as I move my mouse over this, there's a dot here that has 2 bars. As you move over this dot, there aren't 2 bars. Whoops. So this one doesn't have a weight at that point. This one does right here. So I want to grab those 2 bars, and I can tweak that. Or I can go to a spot that doesn't have the bars and make my own. Okay? But it's going to transition from one bar to the next. So if there's bars here that are thin and there that are thick, it's going to transition to those. All right, so that's pretty thin there. And that's the way I think I had it pretty much. Okay. So then what I wanted to do was create the fillers and all that. Okay. So now I'm starting to create maybe some of the other shapes. So if I just simply drew a circle here, obviously this is going to stick out, and it may look kind of weird sticking out. So if you remember, we did the clipping masks. That's how I did this. So I'm going to Control Shift right bracket that to bring this shape to the top, shift click this, and then say Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Okay, so now this is actually inside of that clipping mask. And if I double click it, now I'm inside it, and now I can tweak this and do whatever. So if I just take this and copy it and paste it, and then shrink it down, and then swap this so it's black, and center that in the eye. And then I duplicated this again, shrunk it down, put one here. I'm going to give the color to be white. I just duplicate this here, make it bigger. And that's not white, that's like off-white. There we go. There we go. So now we got a nice looking eye, okay? And then to get that fill around there, let me just go back. To get that outline down there again, I can click on that shape. There we go. And give this a weight. All right, now remember that when I do that, it doesn't do it to the whole thing. Even if I click on this, start playing with some of these, it's not going to work because it's a clipping mask, okay? So what I have to do is I'm going to copy this. So I'm just going to hit Alt and just drag this over. Come on. There we go. So now I have a copy of it. And I'm going to release the clipping mask. And then I can delete the stuff that's inside. Okay. And there's that shape. I will fill this with black. I will give it a stroke. And then I can just set this basically right on top of where that was. There we go. So now that lines up pretty well. Make this a little bit thicker. There we go. And then I can shrink this back down. Remember I had this one a little bit thinner on the bottom here. Whoops. Close enough to that one. Come on. There we go. Alright, so there's his eye that I created. So now I can just take this and Control G to group it all. Give this a eye right. Slide this under his face. Way too big. So shrink it down. There we go. Now that we see his eyes in there, maybe the nose is a little bit lower than it should be, and the mouth is a bit smaller. The nose could be a little bigger. Not that big. Alright, so you see how as you're looking at this, you can really play with where things are at and the positions of all these. And it's cartoony, so it doesn't have to match perspective or the lines perfectly anyway. Alright, cool. Alright, so now let's go through some of this coloring stuff. Okay, so now we have everything kind of outlined. Don't worry about symmetryizing it all the way, like the eye. Obviously, I'm going to add some color to the eye. So I don't want to duplicate it over, then have to add color to both. It's much easier just to finish this off, make sure it looks exactly the way I want, and then flip it over there. Same thing with the ear, same thing with the hand. You'll see the hand is only a piece down here. Alright, so we'll start off with just getting some basic colors. So what I like to do is grab some of these colors here. So these are my 3 basic colors. Okay, so let me just copy these. They're just circles and nothing crazy about them, just circles. And then these are the colors I wanted to use for Superman. So he's red, blue, and yellow. And if I hadn't closed my window, I don't need to look up Chibi Superman, obviously, because it's all the same colors. But you can see his cape's red, his outfit is blue, this is red, red, yellow, and so on. So these are the red, blue, and yellow. Okay. Then we also have solid black. So then I had one that was black. And then we also had one that was white. There we go. So there's my basic color swatches. Now these other ones that are here are variations of those. So, oh, we also have peach for his skin, so I could probably grab that one too. Just shuffle this down. There we go. So they're all variations of this, which we'll get into in a minute. Not yet. Okay. So let's go in here, and I'm going to grab his face. And this is why we want these, so I can just eye drop. There it is. And make sure I'm eye dropping it on the fill color, not the stroke color. Here's his hair. And his hair is actually like black. So this black. And a squiggle, also black. His ear, peach. His neck, peach. His hand, peach. Alright, his cape, red. His boot, red. His bottom underwear and his here. Grab multiple ones at the same time. Same red. Shirt, blue. His leg, blue. it goes. Here's utility belt, yellow. Cool. All right. Now, obviously, we have an issue with the neck, so let's just take this and push that back. All right. So the neck is in the wrong spot, so we just got to keep adjusting it until we get the stuff in the right spot. And probably even adjust this back there a little bit. And that's partly because the neck I drew in this one is probably just slightly different than the neck I drew in the other one. There you go. It's close enough for now. We can tweak it later if we need to. Okay. So that's how we get the basic colors on here. Same thing with the eye. So there's that. I'm going to grab... this one is not any blue that I've chosen from here. Why does that? I just chose the blue of his outfit and then just kind of brightened it some. There we go. And that's good. Oh, I still need to make this background eye white. So that is off still. Scoot that over. Oops, that's the wrong one. I may need to actually go inside here, clipping group. There it is, clipping path. And just fill this with white. There we go. Now I can see it better. So now I can see exactly where this one should be lined up better. There we go. Perfect. All right. So now we have basic colors. We have some basic shapes, obviously. Then we can start adding some extra stuff in here just to make it obviously feel a little bit more realistic. So some things we're losing this squiggle, we're losing where it's connecting to the hair, okay? So I'm gonna add in just a, go back to that squiggle. I'm gonna go back in here and I'm just gonna draw out, it's kind of like wavy shape. Okay, now where the squiggle comes in, I can just kind of hover my mouse over this and say, okay, it's about there. Let's put that about there. I'm gonna get rid of the fill. And I'm just going to take this color, instead of it being black, I'm just going to make it like a darker gray. That way I can see exactly where that is. Now the transition on this is a little bit rough. It looks really odd how that's lined up. So what really helps is if I use these. So if I just use this profile here, that's like the eye shape, it looks like. It creates this nice little tapering to give us this look like that. Okay, so you can see on this one how I did that here. And actually on here I just did kind of like a one swoop. And I also outlined his hair in gray just so I could see the hair better. So on both of these, I actually went through and grabbed that color here. And just this darker gray, just so it's a little bit more visible. And then the same thing, I went through these and tweaked, or found a good profile for it. Okay, so that one that I chose has pointy here, and then it gets a bit thicker, and then it gets pointy again. Okay, you can try different ones, like I said. Try that one, see what it looks like. Don't really need the guides at this point, so I'm just going to turn those off. I think the gray on this could be just a touch brighter. It's better. Okay, let's go to the ear here. Same thing on the ear. Let's go over to here. Let's make this. And now that helps kind of sew the ear in a little bit better. Really feels like it's a bit more drawn on. Same thing with this one. Now you should be in the direct select or the main select tool when you do this. Sometimes it doesn't select the other way. Okay, remember too that we can change the caps and corners. So I can round off that corner if I need to, or I can chamfer it. In this case, I think rounded is probably better. and I could still go in and tweak that shape. That's why I said wait until you have everything else done before you start manipulating it. Alright, so a little bit of tweaking on that ear there. On the eye right here, we can add some extra lines. I'm going to go with a regular pen tool, just because I have just a couple extra points. Okay, grab that. Take that down. And I want this to look like it's blending, so I don't want there to be a bump right there. So I may have to move it like that. I may have to change the profile to that. There we go. That's better. There we go. So see how that gives us just a little bit more definition. That gives a little bit of overlap to it. So it really helps the look of this. Even taking this little squiggle that's here. Oops, he's bald. And maybe tweaking the shape of this some. So even if I got rid of those points. Just kind of shape that a little bit. You can see how we can start to introduce shading without actually having shading on this, right? Or more line work, more volume to the character. So don't necessarily need that one there, but I will add more to this. Okay, here's the nose. An extra point in the middle here. You're really going to be able to go around and kind of look at your character and just kind of pick it apart and see, where do you think more points need to be. Where are you losing the definition? Where could you add a little bit more here, a little bit more there? See, this stroke tool really helps. Add a little squiggle right here. Ignore, again, he's missing the eye. He's also missing an eyebrow, so we need to add that in there. There's probably another line here, too, I think, just on the other side. Now, for instance, let's say that you draw this thing and it comes in the wrong way. Okay, so I'm going to draw one that's going to come in the wrong way. Let's see, right here on the arm. Okay, so I'm going to go here, my pen tool. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go there. All right, so I'm going to go to that same one, this arrow. Okay, so this arrow comes in the wrong direction. I want the arrow to be thick at this point and thin at that point. I could use the width tool for this for sure. Let me take the fill off. But the easiest way to do this is just to go up to my object, go up to path, and then just say reverse path direction. Okay, so when I go to my pen tool and I click here, that's the start, and I click there, that's the end. Okay, and these are always like start to end. Okay, and then you can go into the path, and then you can just reverse it, and it'll swap it to the other side. There we go. You can see, again, just a little bit more definition on him. Down here with the fingers is exactly how I did those. I just kind of made it like a glove. And then added that in. A little bit thinner. 0.5, yep. And I can just duplicate this down to there. Cool. So the nice thing about not going, realistic with this is that we can do stuff like that. Okay, so now go around your character and add enough detail in there to give it the appearance of him having some layers here. Okay, it's actually probably too big right there. Now a lot of this is just kind of hinting at different things, hinting at some sort of thickness or overlap. Make sure our fills are not on when we don't want them on. Make sure our thicknesses are appropriate. There we go. Here's a fun mistake I made earlier. Sometimes you kind of get focused on the stuff, so I'm like, all right, well, I need to make some pecs on Superman here. So I went something like this. Put that in. And it looked more like he had a breast than he had a pec. So I had to adjust it. So that should come across maybe to there, and this be a little bit more square. You know, so that looks more pecky than breasty. Okay, he doesn't really need anything huge there either. We can go with like 0.5 just to kind of, again, indicate, make sure it's at the appropriate height. Weird spot, there it is. It's close enough for now. And really where you have these creases, where like his leg is coming up, that's where you can kind of put a little indicator. And you'll see how you start drawing these and the brushes are actually adapting to the settings you had in the previous one. That's just going to happen, so you just have to go through and tweak it regardless. Alright, so you can see he has the overlap there. I can add some overlap here. Thick part, thin part, and then tweaking. Cool. All right, so you can go around your character and do that kind of work. Then we can get into doing some shading on him. Oops, let me put his eyebrow in real quick. I'm just going to start off with a rectangle. Just sample this. And sometimes I'll start off with shapes like I'm doing here. Sometimes I'll just use the pen tool. It all depends on just, you know, what I happen to go for. You know, instinctively you grab one tool or another tool. As long as the results are what you wanted at the end and what looks good, then that's all that matters. I can do this right here. And then we have Eugene Levy as Batman, or his son. You know, his son is an actor too. There we go. Good enough for now. We can tweak that again later. Alright, so now let's get into shading. Alright, so a couple different ways we can do shading. So let's say we wanted to add a little bit of a shadow right here. Okay, so just a little indicator of shade in that area. I'm going to take this and just scoot it over. So I'm copying it. And I'll scoot this over again. Okay, these are again just samples so that's easier to grab color. I'm going to go to the middle one and just darken it. Not much, just a little bit right there. I'm going to go to the next one. Grab it. Just brighten it some. Maybe a little bit more. May want to just desaturate it just a hair also. There we go. Okay. So here is my blue regular, blue darkened, blue lightened. So let's say that I wanted to add a light color or a dark color on this. So I can go with my pen tool and just draw a shape. Just say I want this to look more here, right here. Right there. Okay, so I want that to be my dark blue color. So I'm going to get rid of the stroke. We don't need a stroke on this because this is just shading. And then for my fill, I'm just going to eyedrop that dark blue. There we go. So now I have this darker area right here. And then I can go through and adjust it, obviously. Make sure that this is lined up with this. I'm going to drop a couple pen tool points here. Soften that up. kind of bring that in like that. Okay, so now I've added just a little bit of a shadow right in that area. Okay, so that's a good way to do it because it's very direct. Just drop the shape on top of it. As you do this kind of stuff, don't draw it on your main drawing layer. Put it onto a different layer. So I'm going to make a brand new layer called shadows. I'll make another one called highlights. And I'm just going to drop this into my shadows because it's obviously a shadow. There we go. And then for my highlights, I can do the same thing. I could say, okay, I want to highlight right here. So I can go with my pen tool and say I want to start the shape here. Let's come up like this. And then we'll just kind of round off here. So I'm kind of curving it. Like that. Okay. And then I'm just going to go with my eyedropper. Eyedrop that. And now you'll see that I have a little highlight on that side of the arm. All right. So there's another way that we could do a highlight. Now here's another way that we could do this too. So you've seen before how we can take shapes. I'm just going to do this on this other shape here just so I don't start screwing with this stuff yet, just so you can see it. So we've seen this shape here. And let's say that I wanted to create a dark area right there. Okay. And just to make it even more obvious, let me go in with this. Okay. Alright, so let's say I have this weird funky shape. Now I want to create a highlight or shadow that kind of follows the shape of that. I could redraw this shape if I wanted to, and definitely try that. But I could also do a clipping mask like we've done before. Okay, so let's say I just drew a shape like this. This shape, which I'll just give a different color to so we can see it better, needs to be in front. And then we can click that and then go to Object, Clipping Mask Make. And you've seen this before, that now that shape is now locked to that area. Okay. Then we could duplicate the shape underneath, or we can click on this shape here and give it whatever color again. And now we'll have these two pieces that are identified with each other. But that can be like maybe too much work for what we need. Okay. And for how many times we're going to do this. So let me just release that clipping mask. So now he's all by himself again. Yep. Okay. He's good. So over here, it might be hard to see. There's a draw normal, which is what we're doing. There's a draw behind, and then there's a draw inside. So if I click the draw inside, and then I go to, let's say, I'll use the blob brush in this case. Okay. So the blob brush is going to allow me to draw shapes. So I'm going to pick a color. Oops. Click off of that for a second. Okay, so now as I draw this, you'll see how it's fitting to that shape. Okay, very, very cool. And it is a separate shape still. So these pieces here are separate shapes. So I can take this red, and let me just say I'm going to do this dark blue, and I'll click this shape and just fill that with a regular blue. Okay, so now that's automatically creating a basic clipping mask that's locked into it. We can still move it around. That's no big deal. We can still adjust the shape of it, which is awesome. And we can still delete points and add points or whatever. But it's a very direct way to do that. And then when we're done, we just make sure we turn this back to draw normal so that when we draw, it's now normal and not inside stuff. Okay. So again, something very cool that we could use for our stuff. Okay. Another thing you can do is, let's jump out of this, is doing some of these patterns. So you can do like stippling too if you want to add this kind of effect to it. And these were created by just taking just your basic circle, and I just duplicated it down, Control D a bunch of times, like that. And then I took that and I went to my distort and transform, and then I said, you know, we're going to preview this. I want some copies. Let's vertically or horizontally offset this. scale things down, and then I hit randomize. And then when you do that, you have to just increase this more. Oh, that's what I did. A little bit of vertical offset. There we go. Okay. So now we get this kind of stippling pattern, which is very cool, because then you can kind of offset these, which offset those. So I could basically create this little contour going around the character if I needed to create this pattern. And help create some of that shading that's on there if I wanted to do something like that. Okay. So very cool how we can add that kind of shading as well. Once you're done with all of the basic shapes, like the eye, the eyebrow, the whatever, then you can go through and start to grab stuff. Use the reflect tool, bring back your guide. Oops, make sure you grab all the pieces. Okay, even group that stuff together. No, because it's in different layers. The group's already, never mind. Alright, so go back to U, or O, click there, hold down Alt, Shift, and pop that over. Why didn't you grab? Oh, I'm going to grab the eye itself. Grab this. Alright, that's everything. There we go. And then if I needed to, I can grab this, these things inside here, and just scoot that over. So I may have to grab this and this. This, that. There we go. Nudge it over a little bit. Probably you have to take these highlights here and make them fit into the same-ish area. There we go. Same thing with his hand. We'll grab his hand pieces. Click the guideline. Hold down Alt. Drag. Hold down Shift. There it is. Grab this, plus all the little pieces here. O, click on that. Alt, drag it. I may need to rotate that just slightly. And then position it correctly. I may need to do the same thing here, because obviously I got some overlap issues. There we go. Alright. And then, like I said, is next to big. Look how easy it is just to grab everything here and just scoot it down to fit. Oh, it's in the wrong spot. There we go. Much better. Okay. So you go through, you'd symmetrize all this stuff. And then at the bottom of it, make sure he has a name there. Paragraph, character, there it is. I'm going to it. This is small caps. I like to put that on there. Pick a better font. This is a horrible font. Yeah, I like that one. Okay, and then these guys here, I'm going to put those on a different layer also. Now I'm going to kind of group these together. So my drawing, my shadows, my highlights are up here. My color swatches, guides, and reference are down here. Cool. So there is our character. Obviously, this one isn't completed. You would still need the highlights on the other side. You can't really duplicate the highlights because it would look odd. Whereas the highlight, the sun's coming from here, the light source is here, the shadow would be there. So on this one, this would actually be lit up, and then this might be in shade, okay, depending on how strong your light source is. This would have some sort of shade there too, but this would have maybe the light source here as opposed to there, okay? But the bands would still be there. So like these would still be on both sides. Oops. And then if you didn't want symmetry on here, you could at any point grab the pieces and start moving it around. All right, cool. So there is your character.